Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here. My name is Jeff LaRoe, and I'm here with Nicole Maceberg. We're with CompTIA, who's partnered with DCEO for the IT JD-NEG grant to get long-term unemployed job seekers back to work in IT. One part of the job search that comes up pretty consistently for us, and I'm sure you guys get questions too, is in regard to LinkedIn. I'm actually going to do a screen share here so you can see my page. There we go. What are some of the best things a job seeker can do to maximize their utilization of LinkedIn? And on top of that, what can an IT job seeker do on LinkedIn to get noticed? This webinar is meant to address these questions that we all get as workforce development professionals. I'm not going to be using a PowerPoint for the presentation. I'm just going to be using this screen share, so you should see my LinkedIn homepage right now. I also emailed out an agenda to everybody who responded to the original email, so you should have an agenda of what I'm going to talk about. We're going to be using my LinkedIn page. Oh, I already said that. Sorry. My LinkedIn page here, it's not the best LinkedIn profile in the world. It's okay. It gets the job done. I'm in the midst of redoing it right now, but I think for the purposes of this webinar, it should be fine. One thing this webinar isn't going to be is a ground level instruction course on using LinkedIn. So I'm going to assume you guys know a little bit about LinkedIn already and have a profile, you know how to navigate around the site, that kind of thing. If you feel that you need some deeper instructions on LinkedIn, we can definitely arrange something like that when we do our site visits to your workforce locations. So we're planning on doing those pretty soon. If you have any questions about LinkedIn that aren't addressed during this webinar, you can ask a question in the chat window, which Nicole is manning, or you can send me an email or give me a call or something like that, and I'll do my best to, give you the greatest answer ever. I only want to mention two ground level basic things about LinkedIn before we get into the meat of the webinar. Number one, there's an inherent subjectivity of LinkedIn. Anyone who sat in on our IT resume webinar from a few months ago will recognize this idea of subjectivity that I always talk about. And if you missed that webinar, you should go and watch it because it was amazing. It's up on our Illinois workNet JD-NEG website, which I'll give you the link to at the end of the webinar. Anyway, what I mean by subjectivity in regard to LinkedIn is that, if you ask 100 different LinkedIn experts what a perfect profile should look like, you're going to get 100 different answers. What works for one person doesn't work for somebody else. Oftentimes in workforce development, we deal in these gray areas where there isn't a perfect formula for writing a resume or writing a LinkedIn summary or whatever. So what I'm going to tell you here it's not definitive, it's not conclusive, and actually some of you might, flat out disagree with me and think that I think that's actually good if someone disagrees with me, just because we're getting a different perspective on these gray area subjects. And number two, in my previous roles, clients were always asking me, why should I use LinkedIn? That was a very common question. I had an easy answer for them, and that was I got my job at the time through LinkedIn, so I was living proof that LinkedIn works. Once people heard that, their ears tended to perk up a little bit. Other answers to that question of why should I use LinkedIn could be something like, if you're going statistical in nature, for example, in 2014, companies used social media and in particular LinkedIn to aid in hiring 93% of all their new employees. So that number has slowly risen recently too. In 2012, it was a couple percentage points lower than that. But think about how huge that is. About 93% of all new hires in 2014 had something to do with social media. And it could be something as small as, a hiring manager checking a candidate's Facebook page to make sure they're, not a lunatic or something like that. What that means is that if your client doesn't have a LinkedIn account, or worse, if they have a terrible LinkedIn account, there's a 93% chance it'll be detrimental to them in terms of getting any particular job. Also, to tie it to IT, the danger of not having a LinkedIn account makes a client look kind of antiquated, like they don't keep up on new technology, or they don't know newer tech trends, and what could be worse in the field of technology than not knowing what the new trends are and being antiquated, right? All right. Now with all that housekeeping out of the way, we can move on to the meat of this webinar. In order to keep it cohesive, the whole LinkedIn thing. I've broken it up into 4 sections. So the first section is LinkedIn tips that are specifically important for IT job seekers. The second section is LinkedIn tips that any job seeker should keep in mind. The third section we'll go through is about LinkedIn tips outside of just your profile page. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on newer LinkedIn features that job seekers can use. So let's start with LinkedIn tips that are specifically important for IT job seekers. I'm going to go over to my profile page now. All right. One of the most important things for an IT person to have on their LinkedIn page is keywords. The same types of keywords we encourage clients to put on their resumes. So this is obviously important for any profession, not just IT, but it's particularly important in the world of IT because that world sort of revolves around keywords. It's the exact same principle as the IT resume, which needs to have a ton of keywords to get past those, those pesky applicant tracking systems, right? Well, with LinkedIn, rather than trying to get past an applicant tracking system with keywords, an IT job seeker is trying to attract recruiters and hiring managers and companies with keywords. This is so important in IT because there are so many, there's programming languages, there's operating systems, there's certifications, there's acronyms up the wazoo in the world of IT, right? And the only way a hiring manager or a recruiter can manage that while looking for a candidate is to search for keywords. Let me give you a quick example. So put on your recruiter hats. Let's pretend we're looking for someone who's a network engineer who has, say, a Net Plus certification. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for a network engineer who has a CompTIA Net Plus. All right. If I search for that in my search bar here, I'm going to click on People, and I'm going to look for people in the Greater Chicago area. Let's see what comes up there. All right, so you'll see first right off the bat, there's this guy, Steven, however you pronounce his last name. He's the first guy who comes up when I search for network engineer. And the first thing you'll notice is that, when I click on his page, you can see that LinkedIn has automatically highlighted the words that I searched for on Steven's page here. So you'll notice that network engineer and network is highlighted a bunch. It's highlighted a lot, actually. It's probably on here 11 million times. Look, it's everywhere. It's network, network, network. He has it on here all throughout his page. And I guarantee you that Steven knows exactly what he's doing by putting that word on his page 11 million times, right? He knows that a recruiter like me is going to be searching for keywords like that, and if he only has network on his page once or twice, his profile page will come way later in my search results. But since he has the word network on his page 11 million times, he came up first in my search results. So it was easy for me to find him. Aside from peppering the words throughout the profile, your client can also add keywords by tagging companies they work for and adding certifications they have or the certifications that they're going for. So when you do this, the company's or the certification logo will automatically populate in your client's page. So I'll show you what I mean by that real quickly here. If I go to my profile, any companies that I've worked for that have uploaded their logos onto LinkedIn, you'll see, okay, so the school I went for, they have their logo right there. Other school I went to, that has their logo right there. CompTIA has their logo right there. I think workNet DuPage down here has their logo. Now, in the IT resume webinar that we went through, there was a statistic where recruiters and companies are only looking at resumes for a total of 6 seconds each on average or something like that. And it's debatable whether that's true, but people are definitely skimming past these resumes pretty quickly, and they're doing the same thing with LinkedIn. So if someone's looking at a LinkedIn for an average of, 6 seconds or something like that, they're going to be looking for these types of logos that pop out at them. And if they're looking for something like a CCNA certification or a PMP or a CompTIA certification, those logos that pop out at them are going to mean a lot to them. It's good. It's just because humans are visual. Most recruiters are, arguably human. So skimming through a profile and seeing a logo of recognizable company or certification will be much more effective than just writing it on your profile, which could be easily missed. Similar to keywords, we have endorsements. Let me go over to my endorsements section here. There it is. Just past it. All right, so the endorsement section looks like this. It's also called skills. They call it skills and endorsements sometimes. They call it all these different things. If you remember in the resume webinar that we did, we had a section on the IT resume dedicated to keywords. Well, the skills and endorsements section is kind of the equivalent section on LinkedIn. The big difference is that the more you get endorsed for something, the more that keyword will help you out in your search results. So our guy Steven from before, he probably had more network engineer endorsements or more networking endorsements from his connections than other people that came up in my search results, which is one of the reasons why he ranked so highly. Clients should make sure that their list of endorsements is in line with their career goals. The reason why I say that is really anybody can endorse, right? I can endorse anybody who's listening to this. Anybody who's listening to this can endorse me if we're connected. It takes 2 seconds to do, which means sometimes you get endorsed for something completely random, you know, like horse racing or something like that, that isn't in line with the job that you want. When this happens, clients can delete that endorsement that might confuse someone who's looking at their page, right? So is this person a network engineer or are they a horse racer? You want to make sure that your endorsements tell a consistent story and are in line with your career goals. So how do you handle keywords if your client is new to the field? We're expecting a certain amount of these clients in JD Energy to be career changers and people who are new to IT. So this is where Burning Glass can help a lot. I'm sure you guys have heard us talking about Burning Glass if you've been on our other webinars that we've done. Burning Glass has the ability to take all of your past experience and automatically tell you what the transferable skills are that you have and what keywords you should use that will assist you in moving into an IT career. It's really, really helpful. If you'd like to know more about Burning Glass, please reach out, contact us. We'd be more than happy to let you know all the information that we have available. After figuring out transferable skills, the next step for someone transitioning into IT is to make their summary really pop. So let me go to my summary real quick. There it is right there. They need to make it clear why they'd be a good fit in IT, and they can talk about certifications that they're going for and transferable skills, any of those things that really sell them as a potential employee. There are a lot of different ways people organize their summary, and I don't think there's one correct way to do it. A lot of people like to put a little bit of their personality into their summary on LinkedIn as opposed to their summary on their resume, which is usually pretty stiff. If your client gets writer's block when they're writing their summary, there's a good default to start with. So you have 4 short paragraphs. There's the opener, which describes what they do, what level they're at experience-wise. The next paragraph is describing a select few accomplishments that relate to the job that they're looking for. The third paragraph describes their personal work style and any important soft skills that might help them land a role. And then lastly, contact information and how they prefer to be contacted. That's a nice, easy, simple way to get started on a summary if your client is finding it difficult to do so. All right, documenting certifications. So I'm assuming that many of your clients will be going for or have already gone to vocational training for a certification, and it's very important that they document this training on their profile as soon as possible. Let me show you how to do that on here. So if I go to my profile, the Edit Profile page, it should be under this View More button right here. You click down on that, and there should be a field that says Certifications right here. It's pretty simple. Certification section is really only meant for certifications that a client has already earned. So if they're still in class, they can put these certifications under the Education or Courses section of their profile. They'll want to put their estimated completion date in there as well, just in the interest of full disclosure, so people visiting their page won't, they'll know that they haven't actually received the certification yet. It's also a good idea to spell out the certification in addition to the acronym. So if you're going for, let's say, a CCNA certification, they put Cisco Certified Network Associate with CCNA in parentheses. And the reason why is just so both phrases will be captured in keyword searches. It's all about keyword searches. that encompasses all the info that's really specifically helpful for IT job seekers. I'm going to move over to things that any job seeker should keep in mind on LinkedIn. All of this info will be helpful to your IT job seekers, of course, but really any job seeker will benefit from these tips. So first of all, a client's profile needs to be what LinkedIn calls complete. A complete profile is 40 times more likely to come up in search results than an incomplete profile. So it's incredibly important to be in being found on LinkedIn. You can check a profile's completeness by clicking Profile. We'll do that here. Click on Profile, and then you go up to the top right of the page, and it says Profile Strength. You can tell mine says All-Star next to it. If that bubble is filled in considerably less, that person's page doesn't have a complete profile. Now, how does a client complete his or her profile? Well, there's a small checklist of things they need to do. First, they absolutely need a picture. A lot of my clients used to really gripe about this. They didn't want to put a picture up there, but they need to have a picture on their profile in order for it to be considered complete by LinkedIn. Sometimes when a client hears this, they kind of throw up any old picture from 1972 of them at their friend's wedding, and they're wearing a cowboy hat or whatever, doing handstand. And I'm sure you guys all know that's a really bad idea. The picture needs to be a professional picture. It needs to be recent. Just a very simple headshot of them wearing a presentable outfit should be fine. Nothing more complex than that. They can get a friend to snap one on their phone. It doesn't have to be a $100 studio picture or anything like that. Just a quick and easy one. A hiring manager should be able to see the person in the picture and recognize them immediately when they walk in the door for an interview. That's the whole point behind it. The second thing they need for a complete profile is at least 50 connections. So that's pretty straightforward. Any less than that, and their profile won't be complete. If they have any less than 50, they're not going to be granted that complete status. There's an added bonus to having a lot of connections on LinkedIn anyway, but I'm going to go through that a little bit later. The next thing you need for a complete profile is 3 or more skills in the endorsements section. That's that skills and endorsements section that I just went through before. And lastly, you need to list 2 positions in your experience section. So that's pretty straightforward too. If your client does those 4 things and maybe puts a little bit of additional effort into other parts of their profile, it'll be 40 times more likely to be seen when a company is looking for those types of keywords. So it's really, really important. I'm going to go through some typical questions that I used to get from job seekers about LinkedIn. I'm sure some of you have had clients ask questions like this before, so hopefully it'll aid you in answering them. So the first question is, what do I put in my headline if I'm unemployed? This was a very common question from clients of mine. So your headline is the thing after your name on your profile. Mine is the one here that says MBA Workforce Development Program Manager at CompTIA. It's an important bit of information on LinkedIn since it's almost always attached to your name. What I mean by that is, if you come up in search results, your headline is almost always right there next to it with your picture. Or if you comment on something, your picture and your name and your headline will show up next to that comment. Or if you like something, or if you come up in someone else's news feed or search results or whatever it is, your headline is almost always going to be right there, right next to your name. So you'll remember when I looked for the network engineer with a CompTIA cert before, that guy Steven's name came up. It had his picture and it had his headline right next to it. Most people just leave the default up there, which is your current job. Some people like to add a credential like I have here. Both methods work if you're currently employed. It's not necessarily the most creative way to go about it, but it works. It gets the job done. But that begs the question, what is your client supposed to put in their headline if they're unemployed? Right? Putting that you're unemployed and you need a job makes you look desperate, and saying that you have a job when you don't is obviously a bad idea. So what do? You want people to know that you're looking so that they can help you, but statistically, companies don't like hiring people who are unemployed. So it's kind of a tough conundrum for a lot of job seekers on LinkedIn. This is also kind of a debated issue amongst LinkedIn experts, but many of them will tell you to list a credential. If you're going for a certification, you can list that certification credential on your headline, and also list how you can help a potential company. So clients will want to keep it very short, maybe have some fun with it. They don't have to say anything about their title or their previous title. This is actually advice that was given to us by our social media manager here, directly by a LinkedIn employee. Have fun with it. You don't have to put your title in there. I mentioned keywords already, so having keywords in your headline is also a very good idea. I saw one online the other day, and I made note of it. It's an unemployed guy, and his headline said, it just said his name, and then it said PMP, Certified Project Manager. So right away, he's using both the acronym and the full keyword in order to cover his keyword basis. So then it says, known for successfully leading multi-million-dollar projects in developing countries. I thought that was an eye-grabbing headline. It's much better than something like, seeking project manager role or unemployed or something like that. Definitely do not put something like that. Putting something like unemployed or desperately seeking a new role, those types of phrases are like recruiter repellent. It's like bug spray for hiring managers. Make sure the clients word this part of their profile properly. The next common question we have here is, what do I list as my current job title? This is another common question from clients that I used to get all the time. Let me go down to the job title section here. The problem is, someone who doesn't have anything listed as a current job on LinkedIn will come up many pages lower in search results. So a job seeker who's already at a disadvantage, since most companies prefer to hire candidates who are already working, they're even more disadvantaged on LinkedIn because they won't come up in search results if they don't have a job listed. So it's a good idea for clients to put something as their current job. Again, clients shouldn't be untruthful here. The best solution is to put your career goals as your job title or profession. So, for example, something like help desk professional or network engineer if you've done that in the past. For me, if I were job seeking, I'd put something like workforce development professional or something like that as my current job title. And then I'd put something like seeking work as the company that I work for. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but that way you're being honest and upfront while not suffering from the disadvantages of not putting anything in the job field at all. Should LinkedIn have the exact same info as my resume? That was a question I got all the time. This is another gray area. I've heard experts go both ways on this. Most people will say that your LinkedIn should complement your resume rather than be a carbon copy of it. One of the biggest differences is resumes usually have a page restriction. It's usually 1 or 2 pages long or something like that. But LinkedIn doesn't have that kind of restriction. A LinkedIn profile can be as long as you want, as long as it's an interesting read to whoever's on the page. That said, obviously you shouldn't write a 90-page LinkedIn profile. No one's going to read that. But you can add what I call color commentary that you wouldn't want to put on your resume. Resumes usually tend to be pretty serious, pretty robotically written, and LinkedIn, you can get away with more personality on it. You can kind of spice it up with your own voice, your own personality. And the reason why I like the idea of LinkedIn complementing a resume is because it's an additional opportunity to sell yourself to a potential employer, right? They obviously liked your resume enough to check out your LinkedIn profile, so why waste that opportunity by retelling them the same stuff that's on your resume? The summary section on LinkedIn tends to be more personable than the summary on a resume. I kind of mentioned that before, where it's very rigid and robotic and kind of feels like you're reading stereo instructions on a resume, right? Clients are able to infuse a little bit more of their personality into their LinkedIn profiles, and a summary is a good place to focus that. You want to be careful that your clients don't take this idea too far. I've seen some LinkedIn profiles that focus way too much on the personality in the summary section, and it kind of makes the person seem really unprofessional, and actually in some cases made them look kind of creepy. So there's a balancing act there. Another big difference between resumes and LinkedIn profiles is that a lot of people write in paragraph format in their experience section on their LinkedIn as opposed to bullets on their resume. But again, it's not a necessity. I mean, you can see we're on my experience section right here, and I still have bullets, right? It's kind of up to you. It's just people are more conversational on LinkedIn usually. The only warning that I'll say about making your LinkedIn and resume different is some clients took this idea too far. where their LinkedIn profiles had such completely different information than their resume that it was difficult to even tell that it was the same person. And I've run into that more often than you would think. And I think that's a bad idea. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're the same person. You have this cohesive marketing material that you're sending out there when you're a job seeker. I'd like to talk quickly about documenting projects. Let me go to my projects section of the page here. There it is. So I've got a couple projects listed here. It's not too extensive. A lot of clients do odd jobs. They do projects when they're unemployed, and then they end up not putting that work on their LinkedIn because it's not full-time experience, right? Well, I always say they'd be doing themselves a disservice not to include this kind of work. And it's a good place to put it if they don't want to put it in their experience section because it wasn't full-time work. Projects is a good place for all this stuff to go. This way that you're getting all those keywords from that experience on your page. Again, I'm hitting that keywords thing again. It's all about keywords on LinkedIn. All right, moving on, when your clients are building up their profile, I'd suggest having them turn off their notification updates, which can be found on their edit profile screen, which we're on here now. It's up at the top. Actually, it's right there. So you'll see at the top right of the page, it says notify your network. So here's why. There's a feature on LinkedIn where you can notify your connections when you change something on your profile. So if I change part of my profile right now, even if it's just correcting a misspelled word in my summary, LinkedIn is going to send out a notification to all my connections that I made that change to my profile. Well, not every profile change warrants a notification to everyone, right? If I just add 2 words to my summary, I don't necessarily want to send out an alarm to all of my connections. So it's a good idea to turn this feature off until your profile is mostly done. Say if they get their CCNA certification or their A+ certification, whatever it is, that's a big deal, right? So they'll want to turn this notify your network button on and then update their page with that certification because that's a big deal. It's something that they want their connections to know about. But if they're just adding 1 extra bullet point to their experience section, it's really not necessary for them to have that on. And then they're running the worry of annoying some of their connections because they're constantly updating their page with minor little changes in their summary or something like that. This next one is obvious, but LinkedIn is supposed to be a professional setting. I say supposed to be because sometimes I see people posting crossword puzzles or pictures of cheeseburgers on my feed, or commenting with angry comments on articles and blogs or whatever. That kind of thing is few and far between on LinkedIn. You want to make sure people keep it professional. Try not to post too much religious, political, or offensive material on your page or personal material on your page. Don't take it too far in that area. And you want to make sure that you proofread. That was something that was always big with my clients. I would say 90% of the clients' LinkedIn pages that I looked at had some sort of proofreading problems on there where I had to go through and edit some of the language that they were using, or they weren't using correct grammar or spelling or whatever it was. As an aside, one of the good things about LinkedIn is that it reports issues really well. So whether it's a problem with your page or someone's posting inappropriate material, it's really easy to report those issues on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fiercely protective of its brand, so they take issues like that very seriously, and they tend to respond in a quick, very helpful manner, in my experience. If someone is being unprofessional or you get spammed or scammed by an advertiser or something like that, LinkedIn is on top of that stuff really fast. And then one more quick thing in regard to professionalism. There are things out there that they automatically post one of your updates to all of your social media accounts. There's one called Every Post. There's a bunch of others. What this does is, let's say that you posted a picture of a cheeseburger on your Facebook account, which you shouldn't do, but if you do, Every Post will automatically post that same picture on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter, on your Instagram, and whatever else you have as far as social media. The idea is that it makes it easier for you to manage your social media accounts. But this is actually a terrible idea for a job seeker because different social media platforms are meant for different things. So posting what you post on Facebook on LinkedIn and vice versa is not really a good idea. For a practical example, I had a client once who posted some awful stuff about driving drunk on her Facebook page, and she used a thing like every post, so that it also updated her LinkedIn with that stuff too. So all this garbage was all over her social media pages, including her LinkedIn. Clients need to keep their Facebook and their LinkedIn pages separate, I guess is the big moral of the story there. All right, recommendations are definitely important for any job seeker on LinkedIn. Let me go into my recommendations. There it is. There we go. I could spend a whole hour talking about how to go about getting recommendations and how to give them, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to keep it pretty short about recommendations. The only thing that I'll say is, look, we know that companies are looking for people on LinkedIn, and a good recommendation can go a long way in making them interested in a candidate. I always think of this like Amazon.com reviews. So if you've ever bought something on Amazon, you can see who else bought the product that you're looking at and what they had to say about it. If you see two products that look identical, one of them has, say, 10 glowingly positive reviews on it and the other one has none, you're probably going to go with the one that has the good reviews if they're comparatively priced. It's the same idea with LinkedIn. Recommendations really help a lot. A recommendation is like a positive Amazon review in your favor. A hiring manager might see someone with very similar background to you, very similar certifications to you, but they also have, this other person has 10 positive recommendations and you have none. Well, if they have to choose between one of you, it's pretty simple who they're going to choose, right? They're going to reach out to the person who has the 10 recommendations. All right, the next section here is LinkedIn tips outside of just the profile. So we've been talking, mostly about profiles here. Profiles are definitely important, but there's this other aspect of LinkedIn that's just as important, and I'm going to rocket through a couple of those now. There's a whole job searching aspect of LinkedIn where you can search for jobs. You can kind of find people at those companies, and that's a really good aspect of LinkedIn. But if you've used anything like Monster or Indeed or anything like that, it's a pretty similar search functionality. So a lot of LinkedIn is just being active. It's participating in groups, updating your status, liking other posts, commenting on Pulse articles, blogs, things like that. These activities boost your visibility and make it easier for people to find you. And it also lets your connections know that you're an expert in your field. You don't have to post. You can elect to just be an observer. This is what's known as social listening, which basically means you're keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in your profession and in your network, and you're keeping up to date on the current conversations in your field and things like that. So it's really important to have your finger on the pulse in that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to post updates or do things like that. You just need to make sure that you're up on current trends. One of the biggest benefits of using LinkedIn is that it makes it really easy to follow and research companies that your clients might be interested in working for. So let's say I search for something like Hewlett-Packard or something like that. Type in Hewlett-Packard. It's the first thing that comes up. Let's say I was really interested in working for Hewlett-Packard. I can hit the follow button, and that would mean that I'll immediately get updated anytime Hewlett-Packard posts anything, which on LinkedIn is usually about job openings. So you're getting all these job openings sent to you on your news feed. They can search for HR representatives from Hewlett-Packard to see if they can find the hiring manager for that position and maybe write a customized message directly to them. So let's try that out now. So let's say I do Hewlett-Packard human resources or something like that. I'm going to click on the people section here, and I'm going to look for people who are in the greater Chicago area. You can see a lot of people here. There's a global account director at Hewlett-Packard. There's a human resources person at True Consulting, executive assistant at Hewlett-Packard. There's all these different people who are working in Chicagoland for Hewlett-Packard. And I might stumble across the person who put out the job lead that I'm looking to apply for. And if that happens, you can take your time and write a really good message to that person in hopes that they respond to it. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. But this is actually how I got my job at my last position. So I know that this method works. I always tell that to job seekers. You want to make sure that the message that you write is a really clean, clear-cut message. You're not boring them. You're not wasting their time. You're telling them how you can benefit them, saying that you just want to talk, something like that. It can't be something that has a bunch of grammar errors and stuff like that. In order for it to work, you can't send a bad message like that. And then the opposite side of that is your clients can keep an eye on who's interested in them. So this is a simple thing, but it's pretty effective. You go here, you go to your profile. It should be on the right-hand side of the page, just under profile strength. So it says who's viewed your profile. If you click on that, it takes you to this page. You scroll down a bit, and you have the people who have looked at your page in the last week or so. So if a client applies at a company or sends a message to an HR rep at Hewlett-Packard or whatever it is, and that rep checks your client's page, that's a good sign, right? It's even better if more people from the company start to check out your client's page as well. But if they apply somewhere, particularly through LinkedIn, and nobody from the company checks out their page, that's probably not the best sign. They may have some sort of issue on their page that they need to take care of, some keyword problem, some spelling error, something like that, that's keeping people from looking at their page. All right, connections. So this is another feature that I could talk about for an hour. I go up to my connections page here, but I'll keep it as brief as possible. Connections are really important in getting noticed on LinkedIn. The more connections someone has, the bigger their network is. And LinkedIn makes it very difficult for you to find someone who's outside your network. Let me quickly define what your network is on LinkedIn, just so we're all on the same page. So you have your first connections, which are the people who you're directly connected with. You have your second connections, which are people your connections are connected with. And then your third connections, which are people your second connections are connected with. I know that can get confusing. Yeah, I always equate it to siblings and cousins, right? So first connections are like brothers and sisters, second connections are like cousins, and then third connections are like cousins of cousins, if that helps you visualize it. All of these people, in addition to the people in the groups that you're in, make up what they call your network. And like I said, it's really difficult to find someone on LinkedIn who's outside of your network. So having a big network is important to getting found. Your client might have all the certifications and experience that a company is looking for, and they're in the perfect location geographically, but if your client doesn't have a big enough network, the company won't be able to find them on LinkedIn. And one last thing about connections, you may have seen people on LinkedIn who have the acronym LION on their profile, on their heading, L-I-O-N. What that means is that they're a LinkedIn open networker, which means they'll accept a connection request from anyone. If someone from Brazil who they've never met before sends them a connection request, they're going to accept it. People do this in order to build their network up as big as possible. I don't think this is a necessity for most people. I'm not a LION. I don't have that on my profile. But if the idea resonates with your client, if they're interested in having the biggest network they can possibly have, it's certainly an easy way to gain a lot of connections very quickly. I would say if they have less than 50 connections, becoming a LION is probably a good idea. You just have to put the acronym LION in your headline and then connect with other LIONs. That way you can build yourself up to 50, and you can get that part of your complete profile taken care of. You don't necessarily have to do it that way, but I think if you're struggling to find a big network, that's a good way to go about it. Groups now, I mentioned groups a minute ago. I'm not going to talk about joining groups very extensively, just again, as in the interest of time. But joining groups like, say, something like the local chapter of IT professionals or PMP professionals or Chicago PMP or something like that will help a client stay informed not only with local get-togethers and job fairs, but they'll know more about their profession's trends if they're active in the right groups. Plus, anybody who's in that group is going to be added to your connections, to your, not connections, it's going to be added to your network. Clients should customize their LinkedIn URL. So when you sign up for LinkedIn, LinkedIn automatically gives you a URL that's ridiculously long, right? It's like linkedin.com/in/ZXY2235, and it just goes on forever. It's a very ugly looking URL. I always encourage clients to put a link to their profile, to their LinkedIn profile on their job search materials, so on their resume and on their business cards and things like that. But the default link is not a nice link that you can put on your resume or business card if you're a job seeker. And the way to fix that is to go to your profile and then click on this little gear thing that comes up right underneath your picture. If you click on that, Go over to the right-hand side. It says Your Public Profile URL. You click on this little pencil there, and then you can make your URL whatever you want it to be. So mine's very simplistic, www.linkedin.com/in/Jeff Lareau. Very easy. Simple for anybody to find me if I tell them that that's my URL. It's short enough that I can put it on my resume without it looking ridiculous, or on something smaller like a business card. It's not going to take up too much room. The default URL is really long, and you wouldn't be able to fit it on a business card without it looking kind of ridiculous. The other question that I got a lot was, is it worth getting LinkedIn Premium? So the Premium button is up at the top right-hand side if you want to sign up for something like that. Again, another gray area, but I'm happy to give my thoughts and my research to you guys. I've certainly met people before who had Premium and liked it, and they thought it was worth it. I don't really agree. I had LinkedIn Premium for a month, and it didn't really add much value to me. What they offer you is, what they say that they offer you is unlimited in-mail messages to people who you're not connected with. So in LinkedIn, you can send in-mail messages to anybody who you're first connections with, right? And you can do as many of those as possible, but you can't send in-mail messages, or you can only send 2 or 3 of them or something like that per month to people who are not your first-tier connections. So what it's saying is that you can send unlimited in-mail messages to people who you're not connected with. You can view full profiles of people you're not connected with. So you can usually view people's profiles up to a certain point, but once it gets to once they get to a certain point outside of your network, you won't be able to see their profile. There's an advanced search feature. And lastly, you can see a more extensive list of who's viewed your profile. So let's go through those. First of all, in-mails are just emails, right, which can be ignored, and they often are. I guess there's some merit to this, you know, unlimited in-mail messages to people you're not connected with. So if your client is the type to send a lot of messages to people, this might be worth it, particularly if they're a good writer and they're good at networking. Might be worth it. For me, I didn't think it was all that worth it. Secondly, you can only view the profiles of people who allow you to see their profile. So you could end up paying $20 a month and still not see someone's profile just because of the way that they have their settings set. The third one was the advanced search feature. I didn't really notice any difference in the advanced search, honestly. Their default free search is already pretty good, so I didn't really notice anything that went above and beyond that. And lastly, I think it's pretty cool that you can see all the people who have viewed your profile. That can come in handy, but you got to remember, you know, if that person has their profile set a certain way, you won't be able to see their profile no matter what, even if you have premium. So again, it didn't seem like it was worth the $20 price tag to me. So the bottom line for me, look, LinkedIn Premium, not worth it. I've met plenty of people who swear by it, but I've also met an equal amount of people who say it's a waste of money. So yeah, especially for a job seeker, one thing that always bugs me is when a company asks a job seeker to pay extra money for something. So I don't know, just kind of bugs me. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's something that I would recommend. The next thing we're going to talk about here is new features on LinkedIn that can help job seekers. So the first new feature I want to mention is what they call pulse articles. You can find this by hovering over interest at the top of the page and then clicking on pulse. Pulse articles are new blogs and articles that people are posting on LinkedIn that are getting a lot of views in the LinkedIn world. They show up on your page and they show up on your homepage newsfeed, things like that. Sometimes they're written by popular people on LinkedIn, sometimes called influencers, but mostly they're just written by, you know, Joe anybody, right? The articles that show up tend to be based on who you're following or what groups you're in. So I follow a lot of workforce professionals, which means that my pulse is usually filled with articles about resume writing and articles about interviewing skills, LinkedIn tips, things like that. This goes back to that social listening thing that I talked about before. It's really helpful for job seekers when they're networking to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on in their industry, which is exactly why LinkedIn called it Pulse. If your client is so inclined, they can write blogs on their own page. I'll show you what that looks like because I've written a few on mine. Scroll down underneath my name and you have my posts here. I've done 5 of them. So it just gives a short little link to each post there. I would only encourage that if they have a proclivity for writing interesting comments or content, or if they enjoy the activity of writing blogs or writing articles. If it's something that they're not really good at, or if it's something that they don't really enjoy doing on LinkedIn, it can actually hurt their chances of getting a job, because people will look at these articles and think that they're not really that good of an employee because they're maybe only putting 50% into writing this blog that they put on their LinkedIn account. Next new feature, this one actually isn't the newest feature ever. It's been around for about 2 years or so. But they added the ability to put media on your profile. So this is an underused part of LinkedIn that can really make a client's page pop. So I'll show you what that looks like as well. Down underneath one of my positions, I have this media added here. This is a Prezi presentation. Ironically enough, it's about LinkedIn. So if I click on that, you guys can see the presentation that I created about LinkedIn for one of my previous jobs. Obviously, they'll have to make sure it's okay to post these things. You don't want to you don't want your clients to get in trouble by posting sensitive information about previous positions. But they can add video, they can add infographics, they can add PowerPoints, they can add anything else that they did at previous positions to demonstrate their work. That's really what it's about, is demonstrating the work that you did at a previous position. It's also really it's a great way to differentiate your LinkedIn profile from other ones. Whenever I see a client's page have any sort of media on it, my eyes shoot right to the media. I want to see what media they're putting on there. Whether if it's a video or a PowerPoint or whatever, I'm always interested to see a demonstration of the work that they've done in the past. I mentioned the part of LinkedIn before about seeing who's viewed your profile, but LinkedIn has also created a new stats page for that recently. I just noticed it in the last month or so, so I'll show you where that is. You click on who has viewed your profile, and then you can click on these different stats pages here, so you can see who exactly is looking at your page. People from the greater Detroit area for some reason. People from Boston are looking at my page. A couple of people from the company Burning Glass, some people from National Label, that kind of thing. This goes back to what I was talking about before. If they send a message to someone from Hewlett-Packard, or if they apply at Hewlett-Packard or something like that, they can check out these stats to see if people from Hewlett-Packard are looking at their page. The other thing here is that, if they're going for an IT position, but they look and they see that mostly people in sales are looking at their page, well, that's probably a keyword problem with their page, right? Because there's some keyword in their page that's attracting salespeople rather than IT people. So they're going to want to have to go through their page, maybe redo some of their keywords, maybe use Burning Glass hints to get some of those transferable skills on their page in order to make it more cohesive for the type of job that they're going for. And that's about it. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to go over. I know that's a lot of information to throw at you guys. And again, if there's something that you guys feel confused about, or if there's something where you feel completely lost on LinkedIn, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to go and talk to you guys about LinkedIn, how your clients can use LinkedIn, how you can use LinkedIn to look at what your clients are doing, and that kind of thing. Any questions, send them my way. If I don't know the answer to your question, our social media manager here, Tom, can lend his insights as well. He's a genius. As always, we're going to stay on for a couple minutes in case you guys do have questions right now that you'd like to ask. Like I said, we're planning on coming out to your locations in the next couple weeks for site visits, just to see how everything is going with Burning Glass, and if you need any additional help in terms of JD, NEG, and getting these IT people through their program. So we'll be in contact soon about scheduling that. Again, this webinar will be uploaded to the Illinois WorkNet JD-NEG website, which is www.illinoisworknet.com/job-driven-NEG. We'll be putting some additional content on that site in the next week or so as well, so look out for that. And that's about it. Nicole, do you have anything to add?
Just wanted to say great job, and we really look forward to meeting everybody in these site visits. We're really hoping that during those visits, as Jeff mentioned, we can really discuss any hang-ups with JD-NEG and also cover things like LinkedIn, assessment tests, any information that could really benefit you in making the JD-NEG program very successful. So we're looking forward to hearing from anybody. If someone is interested in us coming to visit them quickly, or you feel like that would be beneficial to you, just send us an email and let us know. We'd be happy to make you one of our first stops. Look forward to meeting everybody.